Hello, Outfest family.
Hello to our Outfest audience.
What's going on, girlfriend?
Hey there, baby, I'm a survivor. Don't take no shortcuts when I'm the driver. Hey there, baby, I'm a survivor. Don't take no shortcuts when I'm the driver.
I need to channel something like that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching our digital festival.
Whoa, it's just so great.
Hello and welcome to Outfest Los Angeles 2020. My name is Brendan Lucas, the project manager for the Outfest UCLA Legacy Project. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this live stream Q&A in support of the 25th anniversary screening of Bloodsisters, Leather, Dykes, and Sadomasochism as part of our legacy screening section for the festival, which is our look back at the history of LGBTQ film and video. We're thrilled to be able to bring you this remarkable documentary as well as this live stream Q&A. Just one note at the top, unfortunately, we're sorry to announce that renowned writer and activist Patrick Califia was feeling under the weather and unable to make it tonight, so he sends his regrets. But we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge his contribution to the film, his work and activism, and just to wish him a speedy recovery. So on to welcome tonight's guest for the conversation. Queen Cougar became a leather woman in 1990 in the Bay Area and is currently active in the leather community as a title holder, activist, educator, and mentor. Over the years, she has received many awards and has become a sought-after MC, contest judge, and popular entertainer throughout the United States. In 2013, the San Francisco community held a tribute in honor of her 20 years of service with proclamations including the naming of Queen Cougar Day and recognition from the SF Board of Supervisors and State Assembly. She is most proud of the many friendships and extended family she has been fortunate to have and grow with over the years. Welcome, Queen Cougar.
Thank you.
Pony Lee has been a figure in the Los Angeles leather and kink community for over a decade. They are a member of Onyx Southwest, founder of the Leather Tent at Dyke Day LA, founder of Cruise LA, and producer of the first non-binary leather title in Los Angeles. Outside leather, Pony is owner of Folklore Salon and Barber, the premier Los Angeles salon that centers its craft and services around the needs of the LGBTQ community. Welcome, Pony.
Hi, everyone.
And Michelle Handelman is an award-winning filmmaker, visual artist, and writer who makes work that navigates the dark and uncomfortable spaces of queer desire. She is a 2019 Creative Capital awardee, a 2011 Guggenheim Fellow, and has been awarded grants from New York Foundation for the Arts, New York State Cultural Agency, and Creative Capital MAP Fund, among others. The San Francisco Museum of Modern Art commissioned her recent multi-screen installation, Hustlers and Empires from 2018, starring John Kelly, Shannon Fritzschus, and Viva Ruiz, and her project Irma Vep, The Last Breath, 2013 to 2015, starring Zachary Drucker and Flawless Sabrina, has just been acquired by Kino Lorber for the Blu-ray edition of Frank Simon's The Queen. She is based in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Brendan.
Well,
and hey, everyone.
Absolutely. I just want to take it right in and ask you, Michelle, first of all, congratulations on the 25th anniversary of the film. It's an incredible watch. For someone like me who got to discover it for the first time for the festival, I'm curious about why you made this film. Why did you make Bloodsisters, and what about it still seems relevant to you looking back on it 25 years later?
Well, first of all, I don't think I got a chance to thank you and Outfest and Mike especially for bringing us here and letting us do this panel, because it's really been quite a journey watching Bloodsisters come back into the public eye and see how many people it's been affecting. So how did I get started on Bloodsisters? Well, I moved to San Francisco in 1986. And in 86, it wasn't yet the height of the AIDS crisis, but it was a time in San Francisco where AIDS was starting to take over the city. And there was a huge AIDS encampment right down at City Hall. And I lived a few blocks away from there. I lived in the Tenderloin. And I would go there all the time and hang out with people, bring them food, talk to them, and just try to learn about the culture there in San Francisco, as well as, you know, what everyone was going through at that time. And one of the things about San Francisco at that time is it was so politicized. The entire city was politicized. And that was both a very positive thing in the sense that people were speaking out and talking about issues that were important to them and being out about who they were in their lives. But at the same time, it also created these barriers, and there were gatekeepers everywhere. So it wasn't like you could just easily slip inside a lot of these, just a lot of these different communities that were in San Francisco. So through one of my dear friends, Scott Chatsky, who worked at the Gauntlet at the time, I met Skeeter and Jamie, who are both featured throughout Bloodsisters throughout the film. And Skeeter and Jamie were part of the scene. They were performers and choreographers, and they also produced a lot of the shows. And so they were involved with all of the leather events going on. And Skeeter and Jamie, I was hanging out one day and they were like, hey, you should come to the International Ms. Leather Contest. I think it was in 1992. And I was like, sure, put me on the list. I'll be there. And it was that night I was just blown away. And I had been involved in S&M before in many different forms, but for years, but I wasn't part of that community. And when I got to San Francisco and really, came to the show that night actually, and saw what was going on, I was so blown away by this group of incredibly powerful, intelligent women who not only were finding a way to celebrate their weird and crazy kinky sexuality, but also married that with this hardcore political activism. And I remember that night while I was at the show, and I turned to someone next to me and I was like, wow, someone should make a movie about this. This is amazing. I mean, it wasn't just, I knew it would be this wild, fun, sexy event, but it was really about reaching into your pockets and supporting your community, of supporting homeless queer youth, supporting women's health issues, and of course, supporting all of the people who were suffering from AIDS at that time. And I found that a lot of the women in the leather community really spent a lot of time and energy focused on supporting the men who were dying right and left during that period. So when I said this to this person, like someone should make a movie about it, I never thought it would be me. I'm not a documentary filmmaker. It's the only documentary I've ever made. I was an experimental filmmaker at the time, but the Film Arts Foundation in San Francisco always had a yearly grant, and I didn't know, it was time for the grant. I didn't know what I was going to do exactly. And then I thought, I should do the leather documentary. And so I applied for the grant and I got it. And it was the most money I'd ever gotten to make a film. I think it was like $1,500 or something, but it just seemed like a fortune to me. And I just threw myself into it. And 3 years later, we were premiering at Frameline.
Wow. It sounds like it was, kind of in retrospect, it sounds like fate, but just based on what your description of the politics and the scene and how it presented itself to the public and the queer community, it was kind of unavoidable in a way, which brings me to, I wanted to ask Queen Cougar about your experiences of the scene the 1990s, and maybe a little bit about how it changed over the year. How did you get involved in the scene, and what has been your experience of it since then?
Well, I initially got involved in the scene through the clean and sober community. And I was going to clean and sober meetings with leather people, and some of them were players, and they just sort of felt that, you know, with the way that we laughed and joked and talked about things, that I was probably going to be more interested in participating in, you know, some scene stuff, play and whatnot. And they started inviting me to play parties. And I would go to the play parties, and my taste and desire for being, you know, involved just grew and grew and grew. And I started to meet people and develop a sense of extended family through some of these groups and parties and whatnot. And the family that plays together stays together. And so eventually there were a bunch of people whom some of us on, you know, tonight know of, who we were all considered extended family. We went to play parties. We went to each other's performances. We were all very active on different levels, doing different things with different skill sets. So, you know, we were supporting each other in whatever it was that they were doing. Some worked in doing, you know, tattooing. Some worked like at the Gauntlet. We went and got all our piercings and things from each other. We had barbecues and got together, and we met people through, you know, the extended family. And we also participated in each other's fundraisers. So if somebody was involved in something and doing a fundraiser, everyone would show up. And so we supported each other. And that helped to strengthen, you know, whatever particular person, like such as myself as a title holder. Everybody's different. Everybody conducts their title year, those that are in the circuit, in the way that they see fit. I myself like to perform a little bit. I could, you know, sing and do little, you know, fun stuff and scene wise on stage. And I did things like that, and my friends participated. Sometimes I would, you know, have a fantasy that I would do on stage, and there'd be a group of all my extended family members participating, you know, helping me pull it off. And we did these things, and some of the shows were lots of fun. And so it seemed like we just, you know, we developed networks of people who were all doing similar things, but we were supporting the groups that, you know, needed to be supported. There were a lot of groups fighting the issue of AIDS. We were also fighting breast cancer, the beginning to recognize breast cancer at that time. And so, you know, we would just lend our support, raise money, raise funds. And it was a pretty interesting and exciting time.
Pony, I wanted to turn the conversation over to you. You're coming from kind of a perspective of the Los Angeles scene, and maybe like a kind of a generation removed. So I think we talked a little bit before our conversation about kind of seeing this film and recognizing queer elders, or seeing kind of like what Queen Cougar was talking about, like an extended family. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that, and maybe the idea of connecting the dots in that way, like a kind of missing queer history.
Well, I, as a young queer and as a person who was like first generation in the U.S., my family were immigrants. I didn't have a real connection to where I came from. I didn't have a connection to like my my heritage, and I was also trying to establish myself, you know, in and learn English, and I was a queer kid like since out the womb. So trying to establish my queerness, and then later my transness, and also the fact that I was really into some really bizarre like bondage as a child. all these things didn't really make sense, and there wasn't anybody to look up to or to look to help in this discovery. And I this is before the web, but I did like go to record stores and clubs, and I found posters with Ron Athey and other artists and music that like spoke to me and was naturally played at like clubs with an SM vibe. So I was drawn to it, and that's where I feel like I saw a lot of myself, and I saw a lot of butch women and people exploring sexuality and playing with gender, and it was people modifying their bodies, and it was really sexy and exciting for me. And then so seeing this film and recognizing some of the people that eventually I ended up meeting in my life, and some who I hold to be family, my chosen family. Like, this film was so important to see. I'm shocked that I waited so long to see it.
So that kind of brings up an interesting idea. And someone in the film likens leather title holding sort of to like an initiatic experience, right? So in that respect, the leather scene could be, and the extended leather family is kind of structured in a kind of organizational, almost like a secret society. So maybe Cougar and Pony, we could talk about, especially Pony too, because you founded a title here in Southern California, but Pony and Queen, maybe you could talk about the importance of title holding and what that entails.
Well, when we're talking about the importance of title holding, I'd have to say that things were certainly different in the 90s than they are today, without a doubt. At that time, we were coming off the tail end of fighting fiercely to raise funds for, AIDS charities and things of that nature. And it seemed that having a title gave you the platform to do that and raise the funds, because people would show up to see this title holder perform and do whatever it is that they were, known to do. And so at the time, title holding was just, it was, I would say it's like it was in its heyday, especially for women. We always, had a title comparable somewhat to what the male titles were, but the men's community had so much more money behind their title circuit that it was way more developed earlier, say, than the women's title circuit eventually became. So, it was understood that if you became a title holder wherever you lived, whatever city, state it was, if you had the opportunity and you won your local title, your major title, you had to try and make it to Chicago, and your producers would try and get you to Chicago to go to IML, International Mr. Leather, which was the big title of all titles. And basically in that, weekend, you would meet title holders from all over the world, all over the country. You would connect with people who would eventually come and support you in whatever it is you were doing. And this is how we sort of broadened the world of title holding, is meeting each other and connecting and making friendships, and then going and supporting each other with whatever it is we were doing. So I don't know if that sort of answers it. And now, it's changed, it's morphed. I mean, the circumstances are somewhat different, because over the years, there was a real intensity in the 90s, because we were fighting, Reagan and all these people were denying that we had a crisis, and they were denying that there was any reason to give us any attention, any money. And we had people around us that we were actively working with every day who were sick and dying. So we didn't have time to play games with them. So there was an intensity in those years, which I can't say could possibly be as true today, because 30 years later, we have people who have been on cocktails for so long that they are still here. They're surviving. And at that time, people just did not survive. So there was an intensity then that I cannot say, in my opinion, someone can definitely tell me I'm wrong, but I can't see where that intensity is the same now, because we now know that it's not a complete death sentence to become HIV positive. And in back when I was new and fresh in leather, it really was.
I just wanted to add a little bit to that. With that intensity at that time, there was still this incredible sense of humor within the performances, within the title events themselves. And that was one of the things that I found was so brilliant. It was like this, first and foremost, the send up of the Miss America pageant, which is a total objectification of the female body and ignoring her brains. And yet here we were, like these total kick-ass butches and femmes and people who were in various states of transition, just strutting their stuff and on the stage and taking this title and a bunch of flowers. And it was almost like a big fuck you to society, just the fact of having these powerful women take on this mocking of the role of the beauty pageant. Though, of course, at the same time, it was a very serious commitment to the leather community once you were a title holder.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to interject something about that whole thing of when we first started to be in the parades, like Pride Parade and march as a leather contingent. It was amazing because it wasn't just a big fuck you. It was, look, we are absolutely beautiful. We are gorgeous. We are proud of ourselves. We have nothing to be ashamed of. And I think that, of course, there are always going to be issues with what different people chose to do on the floats as we went up the streets. But, what was going to be too much for the general crowd and, what was just enough. But we were showing our pride in a way that you would just never have expected it to be, because we were supposed to be so, hidden and underclass, low lifes hidden in the back, in the corner, in the dark. And that was definitely not happening in the 90s. It was in the early 90s. We were coming out in all ways, and in ways that nobody expected us to have the nerve to do.
So Alexi, yeah, I wanted to follow up with that, answer your question. So Alexei Romanov from Avatar said, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know who you are. And that always kind of rang with me. And, coming into the leather scene as a dyke presenting at the time, I didn't see a women's community in Los Angeles. There was the Miss LA title holder was like, there's a big gap. There was a big gap. There was no women events. If they were a different generation that I didn't have access to. And so, in that punk rock ethos, we're like, well, where is it? I'm going to make it. So I'm going to make it happen. And that's what I did. And then with that came, the birth of the title, the mixed title, which was a non-binary title that Los Angeles never had. Other parts of the US were having it. And I'm so like whatever with titles, I can care less, but I thought it would be a fun thing to people to understand and connect with elders, to people to understand and connect with some part of themselves and just fuse people together. It wasn't so much, it's all kind of a competition, and whether whoever scores the highest or whatever, whoever has the best outfits, who cares? Like, we're all here for having fun and supporting each other and there for a cause. But, so I launched the mixed title along with the Miss title. And then we went into shutdown. So I was like, all this effort. And so here we are, another gap.
We're on bated breath, but
yeah, I know.
Especially watching this too. Hopefully it will maybe intrigue some more people, fingers crossed, when we're able to reopen. I wanted to talk about a pivotal moment in the film, and Michelle, one that you wanted to make sure we talked about, which was the 1993 March on Washington. And I think, Cougar, you had mentioned being there as well, right? And sort of the politics of that, and maybe a bit of the respectability politics of who is running the march, which is, an experience and something that has changed and perhaps maybe not changed so much. So could you describe kind of the experience of going there and why it was so important to you?
Well, I thought it was really important to mention it, not only because to me, it's one of the strongest moments while making the film that I had, but, also I thought it was really important that we acknowledge the march that's going on right now today for Black Lives Matter in Washington, D.C., and how important it is that we never stop fighting, no matter what it is that you're fighting for. You're just going to have to keep fighting just to maintain what little ground you have. And so a lot of times people ask me, what was the most exciting thing that happened while you were making Bloodsisters? And I always say, well, the most exciting thing is actually right now, because seeing young people interested in this history and interested in the film. I mean, that's what I always wanted for this film, to be this piece of strong queer feminist history to remain so people could watch it. But if I'm going to go backwards, the most exciting moment I ever had was marching with the leather contingent with Tala Brandeis leading us down the road with a 20-foot-long bullwhip in front of the White House. And that I get goosebumps right now remembering that moment. And it was just like, it was just so empowering. And Tala, who was an incredible, totally fierce out there trans woman, is one of the people we lost several years ago. I don't know how long it's been now, but there's many people from Bloodsisters who unfortunately are gone. So Cougar, you want to take it from there about DC? We were talking about it earlier.
DC was an interesting trip because I had probably not started my big traveling deal until we went to DC for the march. And the leather contingent had been conscripted to sell some of the, the tchotchkes for the parade. And I had helped I was busy coordinating and doing all of that kind of stuff with the people that came from the Bay Area who were part of our contingent. And so it was a little different, because back home, we go to play parties, we go to events, but in DC, we actually took time to go to museums and, just take in history in all our leather glory, top to bottom, and then prepare for the parade on Sunday. And we had a night before, the Saturday night before, we did an event where I interviewed leather people from all over the world who were there, who came to that particular party, just to find out, where their heads were at about being there in DC for the march. And then Sunday happens. We get lined up in the position that we're supposed to be in or whatever, because it was quite a long, procession. And it seemed like the people who were coordinating the parade routes kept siphoning people in front of us and leaving us, standing on the street side, whatever, where we were. And we kept trying to find out, when are we marching? When do we take off? When are we next in line? And we were not getting any support. I mean, we were not getting any love. They were seriously trying to keep us as far back in the parade as possible, I guess hoping that we would maybe give up and not march. I mean, I don't know where that thought came from, but we got to the point where we had taken all the pictures we could take together. I mean, we have I have several historic pictures of all the people who were there in all their sashes, representing the states and places that they came from. I mean, it was amazing, for all of us to be there together, people who never left their hometowns, who are there in leather in DC. And we just got to the point where we just got tired, and it was hot, it was a hot day. And we just got to the point where we got tired, and we were just like, we were in the front. We had people like Lenny Broberg, who, was a IML and a San Francisco police officer, and Tala, and we were all up front, and it was like, we're just going to start marching. And Tala got out there and cracked that whip, and people got out of our way. Started walking, and we basically put ourselves in the parade because they were seriously just holding us back.
How long were you marching?
Well, the march, we could add up the hours that we stood and waited in the hot sun, because of course you had to be there at a certain time early in the morning. And like I said, we were standing. I don't quite know right now what time we actually stepped off, but once we did, there was a certain route that they had which went past the White House, and so it's true, we were in front of the White House cracking whips and being who we were and all that. But there was a route, and it went a certain path through the streets of DC and around the monuments, and there were so many people there. We were just everywhere, So
did that break you for all marches?
Hmm?
Did that break you for all marches? Where you're like, no, I'm not doing this again, or am I doing this again?
No, it didn't really break me. It was because there were so many emotions. There were a lot of emotions going on for me. I mean, I was there, as Miss San Francisco Leather at the time, and I had a couple of women with me staying in my room, or friends, and and it was sort of like I'm a femme, and sometimes I'm a top and a dom and a mistress, and basically I was in charge of helping keep my little crew of people fed and together, and all that kind of stuff. And then also at the time we were supposed to be, as I said, selling these, tchotchkes and all this stuff, at the fair. And the person that was supposed to be in charge of it was basically in their hotel room playing and having a good time. And so I had to step in and be in charge and collect the money. And most people know I am not the one to collect the money. I like to fool with money. Because when money goes missing, they always look at the people of color like they had something to do with it. So I learned early on, you may participate in the fundraisers, but you make sure that the money business is handled properly so that you don't have to worry about all that drama. And for the most of my career, I did not have any drama around money. But that was the position that I was in. I was responsible for things that I hadn't anticipated I was going to be responsible for. Yeah. And so to have them, play funny, buggers with us and not want to allow us to march, and here I am dealing with all these other things, I had a lot of mixed emotions, but it was an amazing time. I was very proud to be there. I was very proud to represent. And I mean, the pictures basically tell it all. There were very few people of color at that time visibly out representing their communities. We were there. I wasn't the only one, but there was, you could almost say, handfuls.
I was really excited to see you on screen, honestly. Like the images that I was drawn to were images that were captured by Fakir or De La Grace Volcano, you know, and predominantly mainly white folks, or if it's not, it was a gay cis white male. So, you know, to see people of color, I was like I was thirsty for it. And it was very, very hard to be a brown person and to be a brown queer and kinky. And I can see the mirroring that the leather community does with what's happening in the world right now. Like there is this definite shake right now to the leather community, you know, in the same way that these marches in the street are happening. So that to me gives me hope, and it's exciting. But at the same time, it makes me really sad because there's so much infighting. You know what I mean?
And there always has been, honey. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We're human beings, and we have our things, and we fight. You know, it's that if we can fight and get something out of the fight and make it productive, that's the thing to me. Sometimes people take these fights and let them go on way too long for foolish reasons. You know, we're all human, and I can't tell you that in the leather community we don't have these fights and issues and dramas between each other, because we do.
Yeah.
You know? But for the most part, most people have a sense of being in it for the reasons they came in. You know, why are you here? Because for some, the play is the thing. For some, the wearing of the hides is the thing. For some, just the camaraderie and being a part of that community, a fringe community that deals with their sexuality first and foremost. Everybody has their reasons.
We're sort of getting near the end of our time. I wanted to just pop a question to Michelle a little bit about, because you're talking about kind of infighting, and I wanted to ask about the reception of the film, because I think it had some major supporters, but I don't think it was like anything without controversy. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the film, the reaction of the film when it came out, and how that's morphed over time.
Well, it's interesting. When it first, you know, it's so hard to remember everything because it was so long ago. But when the film first came out, you know, on the surface, it was a success. It played all around the world, maybe 2-3 times, dozens and dozens of film festivals. I made television sales in Europe. It was in and out of distribution. But there was always, particularly in the US, there was always this reluctance when programming it. It was kind of like, yeah, we're going to show it because they showed it, and you're definitely part of the queer community. So we got to show this because it's a feature, and clearly, you know, it has presence. But it was, you know, it was not featured like you're featuring this now and inviting us to talk. It was really, you know, just one of many films. I would often get behind the scenes, oh, we're going to get in trouble for showing this, or, you know, it was just kind of this reluctant acceptance. And then there was actually there were a couple of controversial things. Number one, when I made a sale in England, I had a great distributor in England, and they sold it to broadcast in England. But then what I found out later was because England's very strict with laws. I mean, we all know about the Spanner cases, and they're still very strict with laws in terms of marks on the body being shown. So they broadcast Bloodsisters, but the distributor had to cut it up. So there was no piercing or blood or any sort of impalement of the flesh. And I only found that out after the fact. No one told me about that ahead of time. I never saw that edited version. But it was just this mystery, like, okay, here's this film that's out in the world that people want to see, but they don't want to see it. And I think that's what's really important to think about. And part of, what Cougar's talking about too, about not being, accepted in the march and being relegated to the back. And, even in the San Francisco marches, there was always that discussion. Do we want the Dykes on bikes to be in the front? And do we even want the leather contingent there? And it's really that question, why? What are you hiding? Like, clearly you want to see it. You think about it and maybe you have fantasies about it, but you just you can't accept it. And so you have to hide it in some way. And that also happened again when it got picked up for distribution by Women Make Movies, who was handling it in the late 90s. And the American Family Association, run by, the Christian right-wing lobbyist group who attacked David Wojnarowicz and Karen Finley years prior, attacked the NEA when it was up for ratification in 1997. And I never got any NEA money for it. I, just got that Film Arts Foundation grant, but Women Make Movies got NEA money. And the American Family Association took clips from Bloodsisters and clips from one of Cheryl Dunye's shorts and Barbara Hammer's film Nitrate Kisses, and made this VHS tape that they then took to Congress and sent around Congress so the congressmen would know about all the smut that the NEA, supposed smut that the NEA was supporting, and vote against ratifying the NEA. So when I found this out, I ended up calling all of the people I knew. I was in San Francisco at that time, and I called, Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein. I wrote to every congressperson I could. And it was really interesting. I had a really long conversation with Barbara Boxer, and she told me that she remembered that day in Congress and that they wouldn't allow any of the women into the room to watch this VHS tape that they made, that only male congressmen were allowed in this room. And it was just, so hideous and disgusting and hypocritical. You just think about how your work is just being manipulated. And of course, I got a hold of the tape. And of course, they took the sexiest moments out of the piece, to watch. But Bloodsisters isn't about that. Bloodsisters is, it's about that, but it's really about this melding of sexual desire and political action together, and these incredibly strong, fierce women who have just taken their life into their own hands and are living the life they want to live, and thereby making it possible for other people to live those lives too. So it's been amazing to have so many people like yourself, Brendan, come to me and go, oh my God, I love this film. I love this, and Pony, and all of these people in the last year or two who've been slowly coming to me and saying, we want to show it. And it's I think why that's happened is because I think this moment in San Francisco during the 1990s was really important in terms of the public discussion on gender identity and radical sexuality that we have going on now. All of Cougar and I were talking about this the other day, all of the texts, from Patrick's writings, Gail Rubin, Judith Butler, Susan Stryker, all of those people were in the Bay Area. And that's when the writing started. It was happening then, early 90s. And it was a really powerful moment in San Francisco for that. And, in some ways, I think remains so. A lot of those people are still there and still producing a lot of interesting work and are still engaged. But it's a crucial part of queer history. And I'm just so grateful that people are able to see it again. And I don't think we mentioned that Kino Lorber has picked it up and will be doing a re-release of it this coming fall, I believe. So we're really excited about that.
Congratulations. We're excited, super excited to hear that. And they will do right by your film, and we're super excited for more people to see it. I think you bring up a great point, and just Bloodsisters is such a fascinating examination, not only of sort of the internal desire, like you were saying, but looking back at it now is kind of an inadvertent time capsule. I think when you're making it at the time, I don't know if you knew, it's like I have to capture this time and this place, and it's an opportunity to sort of talk about sort of the places and people that have left or that we've lost, say in San Francisco. But I also want to talk about Tony too, like how you're documenting your scene and how you think about, since I'm coming from like the archival LGBT lens, just kind of how you have and how you are documenting and preserving that legacy, while also making sure it's not just static.
Honestly, I'm terrible at it. Like,
you have a great Instagram, though.
I barely go online or social media very much. Like, I have somebody else handle that business. I don't even take selfies. Like, that's like, so. But I do get some collections of photography from like people who attend the events. We did have one of the photographers, motorboot photography, shoot our contest, like photograph our contest. We've had Graham Colbean's video some of our cruise title holder like meetings and footage. So we'll see what comes of it. It's right now, ever since everything is on pause, it's giving us a little bit more time to see where we want to go. With it.
Absolutely. And Queen, how about you? Have you taken any steps, or are you like a photo collector? I know you've done a lot of appearances, so is anyone your like videographer, or does you just kind of make it into different scenes, different recordings?
Well, if you're talking about currently, I could say I'm semi-retired. I'm available, like I've made myself available for today when people want to talk about things, or if someone is interested in mentorship or things of that nature. But on a regular basis now, I'm not, I attend, or before COVID, I would attend the major events that happen, if they happen in my area. But it feels to me like it's okay for me to have given over that space to those coming in now. My time has come. I've done a lot. I have a documented history. I don't know if I will one day put together something that, is more comprehensive about all the things I've done. But, at this point in the game, the future is to the young, and they got to create their own way. There will be a new way because COVID has changed our lives going forward. But I believe it'll be fine. Things are going to always change in life. There's always going to be change. So this is simply a change that the community and those coming in with energy and bravado and resources, ultimately they will find a path for the community, and they will document. I mean, there's so much available. There's so many books, there's so many videos, there's so much media available now about the lifestyles of people in the SM community that there's no way that it'll be like it was back in the 90s when we were just starting to write the books, just starting to write the manuals, just starting to do the performances and, be active and have the shows. And, those days are gone, but they will be replaced by something more, something different for the time. That's just how life goes, I think.
So I think a well-earned retirement. You deserve a break, and long may you reign. Well, I want to give everyone an opportunity to maybe say a few parting words to our audience at home before we go. So if we want to start maybe with Pony, and we'll wrap back around to Queen and Michelle.
You mean say bye to everybody watching?
Yeah, if there's anything else you want to share. I mean, it's a weird time and it's hard to like plan anything, but
I don't know. I mean, thank you for anybody who's tuned in. And thank you Queen for, sharing some of your story, and Michelle for having me. And I don't know, I'm very grateful. I'm excited to see to see us all on the other side of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Queen Cougar, any parting thoughts?
Okay, I would like to encourage people out there in the future, give your sexuality a chance, because you have no idea what's in store for you, what's available to you, until you allow yourself to dream and participate. Put yourself out there. Make informed choices, because nowadays we have so much information that's available, but one day we'll be able to actually be in close proximity with each other. And I think the SM lifestyle is a lifestyle that has to be practiced, and we practice together. And so since this is a time where we cannot be together, don't think for a minute that that means it cannot happen, and that the future is not bright and possible, and experiences are out there and available for you to have. Because I know that it's going to be possible for you to have everything that you think is possible. There are things that I never anticipated happening in my past that occurred because I was open to it. So be open and trust that this crisis drama of our lives will abate itself at some time, and the future is out there. And be safe.
And Michelle, last
Wow, that I have nothing to say after that. That was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone who came here and is here right now. And, of course, thank you to Cougar for, and everyone in Bloodsisters for sticking with me for 3 years while we made that film. I really feel like it belongs to all of us. And Pony, it's been great getting to know you. And I'm so grateful that we've got a new friendship going on here. So thank you everyone for coming. And Outfest, I just think you're doing a great job running a festival, during the pandemic. But the 25-year anniversary tour was supposed to premiere at the BFI Flair Festival in March, and it, just at the last minute got shut down because of the pandemic. And Outfest, I just want to say you've been like the first festival to really like come up out of the ashes and pull it together, and I think you've done a great job. It's not easy.
Thank you very much for having Bloodsisters be a part of the festival, because I'm after a certain period of time, I wouldn't have expected that people still had interest, but I am very happy to see that, that our history can be a part of the future.
People are still kinky.
Don't forget.
I'm quite sure of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to be a part of this project.
Oh, of course.
Too.
Of course.
Thank you all. I just want to thank everyone at home for watching. We did have one question. There were people in the chat who were asking about Tala. And I don't know if there's anyone else who wanted to shout out who was a subject. I feel bad just leaving questions on the table there. It's not every time that everyone is in one digital chat. So there's a question in the chat about Tala and maybe some other people.
Could we talk more about Tala and other women who were in the movie? Well, I will say that Tala was a dear, dear friend of mine and a play partner of mine. And I miss Tala deeply. And of course, it was a shock that she passed. We never knew what our lives would be like. And people have started to leave us for various reasons, health crises and whatever. I just think that if Tala were around now, she would have something poignant to say that would help people know that, she was just living her life, being out there, being with us in DC, doing what was required or what was needed to, keep her peeps involved and moving along. I can't speak for Tala because I don't know exactly what Tala would have said about this time period and what we're going through, but she's going to always be somebody that we're going to miss terribly, because I never anticipated that these people would not be here still to this day with me. I am, getting up there in age, but I didn't expect to be here without her and a bunch of other people who you guys probably wouldn't even know if I mentioned their names, but they were some very fierce leather women who helped me to find my teeth in the community, helped me to push through a lot of personal, points in my experiences, and helped me to develop as a leather woman and grow up and mature as a leather woman. And, there were a lot of women in the film who I have no idea why we don't really see them right now. They have their own reasons. Like I said, I'm semi-retired, but I'm still willing to talk on occasion, and be, involved in certain things. Other people have decided they don't need to, they don't wish to, or whatever. So there are women from the film who are still around, but they make their choices about how they participate and connect with people, right, Michelle? And so, I don't know what to say about other people in the film because, they exist, but they're choosing not to be in a public situation.
Well, one person I'd like to give a shout out to is the writer Wiki Stamps. And Wiki appears at the end of the film. And I actually, I think that when I shot the 1993 International Ms. Leather Contest, I think I was kind of almost at the tail end of my shooting. And I believe that's where I met her, because Wiki she had been flown in from Boston to be a judge, right, Cougar, at that festival, right? And I met her at the Eagle one night. It was before the festival, and I don't know what was going on there, but we were just hanging out. And I was immediately, for some reason, we were both immediately drawn to one another. And Wiki passed away a few years ago. And that's been a real loss and also another shock. But she really mentored me in a lot of ways as an artist. And I remember her just gazing. She would gaze into you and gaze right into your soul. And I remember when we were interviewing her, she kept cracking jokes, but then she kept saying, "You're here because you want to find out something. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you find that out, you're gone. You're going to do something. You do something else. You do something else." And it was so simple. And I was like, well, I'm not really going to be gone. But I understood what she was saying. It was about the artistic pursuit. And when you dive into something so deep, like doing a project for 3 years or 4 years, however long, which is most of my projects take that long. It's this deep dive into the unknown. And that's part of the artistic process. And that's what makes it super exciting, and that's what keeps us creating and making new stuff. And she really helped me understand part of that process. And I miss her a lot. But everyone in the film is so great. And as Cougar says, I talk to other people too, and other people just have things going on with their lives.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, this was 25-year anniversary. And some of us, we've been participating in the community for 30 years or more. that's a lot of time. That's someone's lifetime. And for us to, be at this end of it, wanting to just experience something more, I won't say something different, but because I haven't turned my complete back on everything that I've done or everything that I participated in. But I spent a lot, as I mentioned to Michelle, we were chatting last week. I spent over 20 years traveling, going to leather events, and I traveled all around the country. And most of the places I went, I saw the airport, I saw the bar, the venue of whatever it was, the fundraiser we were doing. I saw the restaurant they took us to eat after that. And I saw the hotel, and I went back to the airport. And I didn't exactly experience, anything else. So when you've seen the seedy side of America or, that aspect of America in over 20 years of travel, I'd go to IML and be working so hard doing the things that I was doing, just getting myself from thing to thing and having enough stamina to, go through it all. At some point, you can look up and say, okay, I may not participate, I may not show up at this event or that event, but I could still completely support you. And I found it's been very interesting. Sometimes when you choose not to go to certain things and people know you're still alive, you're still out there, you're still here, they begin to think, oh, well, she's not supporting us, or I hear weird things like that. And now because of, the internet, you see someone say, well, so-and-so people are not supporting, a particular venue or producer or whatever. And it's such crap, it's like some of us are just tired. And, in the years since Bloodsisters, I've had one or two health crises that I've had to cope and deal with too. So I'm thankful that I'm, for the most part, pretty healthy and I'm here. But sometimes I just cannot do the things that I would like to do. Case in point, the marches. I can see the marches that are happening now for Black Lives Matter and everything else from my window where I live in San Francisco. But I can't march. I can't walk as well as I once did. So I just can't do that. Does that mean my heart and soul is not with everyone? No. I have been there. I have done all I could do in my time. It's time for the youth to do it for us. Do it for themselves, but do it for those who remember and still feel that same sense of connection and intensity about the causes. But we may not always all be where we, once were.
I think that's a beautiful note of empowerment to leave on. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks to you, Queen Cougar. Thanks to Pony Lee, and thanks to Michelle Handelman for joining us for this conversation. Thanks to each of you for the incredible work that you have done and that you are doing. And I just want to wish you to continue to stay well, be as well as you can. Stay safe out there, and thanks again for joining us for this conversation. It's been a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Cheers. I want to say thanks again to everyone who's joined us for the live conversation at home. This Q&A for Bloodsisters. I just want to remind you that the film will be available through the Outfest Los Angeles 2020 platform until tomorrow night at midnight. Just go to outfest.org. You can check out our full festival lineup, and you can learn how you can access our incredible program of films online, as well as through the Outfest Now app, which is available through Apple TV, Android TV, and Fire TV. So once again, special thanks to Queen Cougar, Pony Lee, and Michelle Handelman. Thank you for joining us at home. It's been a pleasure to introduce the film to our audience and to hear their experiences 25 years on. So thanks again, and until we